Good evening. My name is Vincent Leone. In tonight's lecture, we're going to be talking about green supply chain management. This article that I was read this week, this article presents a conceptual framework examining the relationships between green supply chain management, or GSCM, as in brief, based on environmental collaboration, sustainability performance in the Malaysian manufacturing companies. But this article I'm about to present this evening is not just for Malaysian companies, it's for every global company out there. So, the lecture tonight, I'm going to introduce the Green Supply Chain Management, again, GSCM. I'm going to go through the four dimensions of global supply chain management practices. I'm also going to discuss the environmental collaboration, the sustainability performance, and then in the end, I'm going to go through a conclusion of why it is best practice for all companies to be following this kind of platform. So some of the key concepts, it's an integration of environmental thinking into the supply chain management. Prior to the 1990s, supply chain management was more of dollars and how do we get it to the consumer or to the manufacturer quicker based on a cost. But in the late mid 1990s, the environment became a focus of supply chain management, where then the concepts of green supply chain management started to derive. So green supply chain management, it focuses to minimize the waste, emissions, the environmental impacts it may have across entire supply chain from product design to the end of management. And some companies that do this very well, I can give some examples. Walmart has their green supply chain management. They implement projects, I'm trying to think, Gideon, to eliminate 1 billion tons of greenhouse gases from their supply chain by 2030. That was their charter, that's their goal. Every company, as a selling point, they will have a charter or some kind of statement on their website that say they're an environmentally friendly company. And you can say that, but the importance is, are you practicing? Are you doing that? And showing numbers and metrics is where it would be. So Walmart, they require their suppliers to report their emissions. So even though Walmart is maybe the end company for that product out there, the face of the product, but who they get their products from, they require them to have report their emissions, their renewable energy, and they make them optimize their packaging. These are all part of the green supply chain management. Patagonia, another company, I think one of our classmates, I read earlier in an article that they use recycled materials. Another way of another company involving and engaging in these concepts to minimize waste and hazardous chemicals and mostly eliminating waste. And their partner, they partner Patagonia. They have that take back program. I believe the classmate mentioned that for worn clothing. So if you have a pair of jeans, take it back, recycle it. Let's get that program going. Again, all that green recycling. They partner with suppliers committed to environmental standards, and they track environmental impacts throughout their whole supply chain. So Patagonia, another good company that practices supply chain management. Another example, just going through companies that use the aim for minimizing waste and doing these practices, ethical business practices. Unilever, another company. Uh, they have sustainable living plan. They work with their suppliers to reduce environmental impact. It's a common theme: reduce environmental impact with all these companies. They source sustainable raw materials. Like now, we're going back to the beginning. The raw materials, grain, wheat, coal, anything that's a raw material that's part of your product. So Unilever, they go all the way back to the raw materials. Again, another company that minimizes packaging waste, and they implement water conservation across their operations. Now, using a different approach, saving water, instead, where Patagonia is raw materials take back programs. So now we're looking at Unilever who reduces their water. And another company, last example here would be like Nike. Nike implements to move to a zero initiative. They use recycled materials. Again, why reduce environmental substances out there when we can recycle and reuse? They have sustainable manufacturing practices. They use renewable energy in their facilities, and they design their products to reduce waste. So those four companies there alone are just some examples of how green supply chain management can work and promote a company. So why does it matter? Why does having green supply chain really matter? Well, all businesses pose a significant environmental risk on how they produce their materials. Like, what is their carbon emissions? What's their toxic waste? What's their pollution? How much are they hurting the environment by producing their product? If they are hurting their product in an environment, you can see here if they have poor environmental performance, it can lead to monetary losses. Shareholders, they don't want to invest in your company if they see that you're not practicing in good ethics in terms of the environment. I'm trying to think. Exxon Valdez, years ago when they spilled the oil into the ocean there. I can't remember the ocean, but they had a spillage. They had bad. It was all over the TV, bad news. Exxon, they took a big hit on that one. Today's day with the internet and, and and just social media, it just that more knowledge to the consumers in the end, or that much more advertising that you are not practicing in good faith, and it could hurt your company. So you want to invest your companies and go through a whole streamline why it matters, so that companies implementing good supply chain management, it's proven that they have cost savings, better public image. Of course, it would definitely come with a better public image, and they reduce their environmental liability. So again, it doesn't matter where in their supply chain they're getting it from. And my next slide will show the 5 sectors of where this comes from. But if you practice these, it's good promotional for you. Stakeholders would want to invest in your company, and consumers would want to buy your product because you're acting in good faith for their children and their families and their environment and their environment, their global environment. So environmental collaboration with suppliers is essential. It's the success of it. So, but when you go across seas, go to other nations, other governments, their practices may not be in line with, say, the American standards. So going overseas could sometimes also hurt your company because maybe you're doing everything right here in America, but the initial start where your product comes from, your raw material comes from, maybe in their country they're allowed to burn coal and X emissions into the air, which here would not even be qualified anywhere close to the standard. So you have to be very careful, and companies have to be very careful when they go abroad to get raw materials, or they have manufacturing in other countries, that those companies, they're working in an ethical fashion across seas, because in that country maybe the standard isn't as high as here in America. So those are things we'd have to be very cautious about um, as a company buying overseas. So here, supply chain, the affected, where it all starts from, who's affected if bad, and who's affected when good. So, and all five have to be aligned. You as a company can't just have 4 out of the 5, because you'll still get the bad publicity. So, for example, your raw materials, they come from China. Say, whatever, a coal mine in China where they're burning emissions into the ozone, and causing all kinds of environmental hazards to the globe. But yet then once that raw material comes here to the United States, you have a clean practice, a clean manufacturing practice to the top right here. Um, and then once you manufacture your product, you have it, and then you distribute it from the manufacturer to the wholesaler. Now it sits in their warehouse. They too practice good green supply chain management. And then the retailer, then you say, okay, our retailers, the stores, they support environmental friendly practices, and then our consumers say, okay, well, that's great, but if something happened overseas and it was a raw material and something, it gets publicized and they find out that your company is actually, your raw materials are coming to that company, it can be detrimental. Even though all the four here in the United States are meeting the mark, but the one in China, or, and I'm using China as an example, I don't mean to be picking on China, but if China had an example there where they were burning holes in the ozone layer, or their carbon or coal or their mining practices are not standard, once that got out, consumers then would be like, well, we don't want to buy that product. And shareholders say, well, we're losing shares and revenue. It's a chain reaction. So you would always have to make sure where at each stage of the game here in your supply chain that everyone is acting ethically, you know where it's coming from, and they stand to their word or their standards. Because if it doesn't and it gets out, it can be detrimental to your product. So we have these four dimensions of green supply chain management and green procurement. Green procurement, the suppliers, it's selecting your base environment. Like who are we selecting as our supplier for these materials? And Walmart, I'm going back to Walmart, they require their suppliers to meet specific environmental standards. And they provide scoreboards to track their sustainability performance, influencing purchasing decisions based on those supplier environmental capabilities and commitments to reducing carbon footprint. So you have to have these green, with this green procurement is the first step to this foundation, because you want to make sure that your suppliers are acting. Again, going back to my last slide, step number one is my suppliers acting in good faith and good resolution to the environment. So then we get our material. Now we go to manufacturing, and green manufacturing, it reduces hazardous substances, increasing energy efficiency. So who practices that? You want to find a company that would practice reducing these hazardous substances and increasing energy efficiency. Um, in supply chain, there's a fine balance of meeting that green supply chain management, but you also got to meet the costs of that. How do you balance the two? Yes, we could be totally green, but it costs so much money, and you lose so much revenue on your product that you may put yourself in a negative position. So you have to find that balance where you bring the two together. Who does this very well? 3M. 3M is an excellent example of green manufacturing. The company has implemented extensive programs to reduce their hazardous substance and increase energy efficiency, including their 3Ps program: pollution prevention pays, which has eliminated billions of pounds of pollutants and saved billions of dollars since 1975. If you recall earlier in this lecture, I said that this companies didn't start focusing until mid 1990s. So 3M since 1995, we can call them, you know, the innovators of green, looking to the future. And since 1975, they've saved billions of dollars in manufacturing and waste substance by practicing before it was really a thing. Then we have green distribution. Green distribution, who does it better than Amazon? Right? Amazon, a leading company for this, eco-friendly packaging and warehouse initiatives. They're one of the biggest ones in the world. They have a global footprint. The company has implemented a frustration-free packaging program. That's another initiative they have that reduces excess packaging materials and uses recyclable materials, while their ship in own container programs eliminate additional packaging for items that don't need it. My daughter, for example, orders from Shein. Again, Shein, Chinese company. She said, Dad, I got a Sheen haul. and I see a box come deliver to my porch, and she said, "Oh," I said, "Oh, how much did you spend?" She says, "Oh, I only spent $60." Well, she opens up the box, and the amount of plastic Ziploc bags inside there holding little shirts, 50 Ziploc bags in one little box. I don't think Sheen is acting with the GSCM practices in mind. It's not recycled material. It's plastic. They could do a better job in packaging their goods and sending them here to the United States. But again, that's just one example of not having a good practice. Where Amazon, they do practice good distribution and eco-friendly packaging. And then lastly, in the dimension here is green logistics. Oh, and I apologize. I apologize. That is a typo error on me on number 4. That should say green logistics there. But again, for green logistics, we can see here alternative fuels, the alternative fuel vehicles like EV, route optimization. That's another green logistics, and reverse logistics. Are few examples of how we can get green logistics in part of this supply chain management. A company that does this well above and beyond anyone is UPS. We're all familiar with UPS. The company operates one of the largest alternative fuel vehicle fleets in the world. Again, UPS is all over the world. They include electronic, hybrid, natural gas, and propane vehicles through their whole rolling laboratory program. They have this whole program where they, with as many trucks as UPS has, they have to find ways to be GSCM practicing. So how do they do this? And they look at their fuel, their route optimization, all that. So they use an advanced route optimization technology called Orion. It stands for On-Road Integration, Optimization, and Navigation that reduces fuel consumption and emissions by optimizing delivery routes. The shorter the truck has to go, the more efficient the route is, the less carbon, the less pollutants in the air for their trucks, less fuel burned, more saving to them. So there's that cost savings too, but with it has that impact of saving the environment. So there's benefits to both sides. So environmental collaboration and sustainability performance. Cooperative efforts between companies and suppliers to achieve environmental objectives, including joint development of green products and environmental programs. It's got to be a joint effort. Everyone has to be involved. Everybody has to have the same initiative to save the planet, to be more environmental friendly. It is a cooperative approach. Everyone has to have the focus of including waste reduction initiatives and cleaner production methods. In the early 1900s, the boom of the Industrial Revolution, coal burning, wastes into the rivers and water streams. If we did not make changes from those early practices, where would we be today? What would our environment look like today? So many efforts today to make sure that we have clean energy, we have clean resources. If we kept those practices of the early 1900s, I don't know what our environment would be like today, and it's a scary thought. Just the amount of what we do produce today versus what we produced earlier in those early 1900s, I can only imagine what it would look like. So yes, governments do step in. There is regulatory actions that are put in, but it starts with the company to want to have that as their initiative too. Like the companies have to be involved too. The government can only put so much out there, and the companies have to do it because there is savings for them. There are not potential. There are savings for companies out there. So the economic performance. So you can have these cost savings through materials and conservation and energy efficiency. You have improved market and you have a competitive advantage. If your company can deliver the product a little bit quicker, a little bit cleaner, and a little less cost, you're going to have that competitive advantage. So again, your economic performance can also increase based on just following the green supply chain management practices. And your profitability, it attracts social concessions with investors. Your investors want to invest with you. You're doing the right thing. You're making money, and you're keeping the environment safer and greener. Who would not want to invest in your company? So it does have this economic performance. Your environmental performance, again, you can save money, but now your environmental performance, you can reduce carbon footprints and waste generation. Again, there's a cost to waste generation when you have waste and you need to remove it. And in these days, removing hazardous waste has a high impact cost. So if you can reduce it, you're saving money and increasing your bottom line. So that's one thing. Minimizing environmental risks and pollutions. I worked for a company for 16 years called International Flavors and Fragrances. The EPA, we would have what we call the scrubber. It's where it's almost like a muffler for a manufacturing process where we would be releasing fumes into the air, and then but we needed to reduce that smell, those fumes, and we had to make sure that they were always running and operating. We had 10 of them on our site. If one of them was out of tolerance, and then when the EPA showed up, we can get fined $10,000 per scrubber, and we had 11 of them on the property. So if they were all out of compliance on the time of an inspection from the EPA, that would cost that company, our company, $111,000 right there alone. So again, there is a monetary impact if you're not acting in the best practices. And improved resource efficiency and conservation. The more materials you can reuse, the better efficient you are, and streamlining your product. And then last but not least, you have this social performance. The community and goodwill, the corporate social responsibility, like what at the end game, the consumers, they want to know, is everyone acting in good faith to the environment? See the picture here. This is the environment we all strive to live in: clean air, everybody enjoying themselves. So if we all act in a greener and safer way, stakeholders will want to. You'll have improved relations with your stakeholders. The community will want to buy your product because you can deliver. It's cheap, or it's cheaper, or it's reasonable, I should say. And you can deliver, like I mentioned, you can deliver it, and it's doing the right thing. It's ethical. And it builds your brand reputation. It strengthens that brand reputation of your product. So in conclusion of this lesson for green supply chain management, green supply chain management practices positively relate to sustainability performance. Environmental collaboration moderates the relationship between green supply chain management and sustainable performance. Companies that implement benefit cost savings, I mentioned that earlier, improve public image, and reduce environmental liability. Practices positively relate to the sustainability performance, and the environment moderates the relationship between GCM and sustainability performance. If we practice this all, if every company puts this in the forefront of their decision making, think about the future, think about our environment, think about what it could have been from the 1900s if nobody did anything to what it would be now. But because people, companies, investors made progress, looked to make a difference, and with technology and AI building today, we're only getting better and cleaner. Well, I want to thank you all for listening to my presentation tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions about my presentation, I have my email there at the bottom. And good luck the rest of the semester. Thank you.